When the new era of ground effect cars debuted in 2022, one of the biggest surprises was that the dominant Mercedes team found themselves fighting for points rather than wins. The reveal of the 2023 car, the W14, may however mark the end of their struggles, as there are some encouraging signs pointing to the German automaker's return to form. So let's take a look at the new Mercedes car, what changes they've made over the winter, and why we believe they'll be back on top this season. 2022 marked the Silver Arrow's worst performance since the 2012 season, and their worst since Lewis Hamilton joined the team, as an inability to overcome a porpoising issue saw them fall behind early in the season. The team, which won 8 consecutive constructors and 7 consecutive drivers' titles between 2014 and 2021, gradually improved, securing their only win of the season in Sao Paulo. But a question mark looms over them heading into 2023, with team principal Toto Wolff previously admitting that they're at a disadvantage compared to their rivals. While Mercedes focused on fixing the problems with the W13, Red Bull and Ferrari were able to shift their focus to 2023. But Wolff has warned them not to become complacent and to not dismiss them as championship contenders. "Do not write us off," Wolff told The Times. "In this life, you never stop giving it everything." The 51-year-old Austrian admitted they got the physics wrong when it came to the 2022 season's change in regulations, with too much emphasis on seeking performance in a car that could run very low to the ground. "It's no myth," Wolff said. "We misinterpreted some of the regulations. We put too much emphasis on seeking performance in a car that was supposed to run on the ground, very low. But you can't run it so low because the floor of the car was hitting the ground, so we had to lift it up, which changed things again. It sounds like a trivial explanation, but this is the reality." Now, this was something Wolff had been preparing for, knowing that Mercedes' dominance would not last forever, but he said their success stemmed from their decision to empower their employees, and when that went wrong, he as a CEO had to take the blame. Wolff took over as Mercedes team boss in 2013, just before the hybrid era began, and Mercedes jumped to the front, and 2022 was the first year in which the Austrian had to lead a team with little chance of race victories and no chance of winning the championship. As a result, Wolff admitted that he needed to keep his management style in mind throughout the season in order to keep the ranks calm. "It was learning by doing," he explained. "The behavioural pattern is, of course, initially strongly influenced by 8 victorious years. We also had difficult moments again and again during these 8 years. We talked about the fact that there will be a day when we lose. We were aware that then it's about sticking together, being aware of our values, and finding a way to work our way out. In the end, that was the key, that we return to a more respectable level in terms of performance." Mercedes hopes that with their new F1 W14, they've taken the best parts of last year's problematic W13, namely very good high-speed downforce, but eliminated the bouncing and porpoising that limited its potential and made it such a difficult drive. Many of the previous cars' highly individualistic details, such as the narrow vertical inlets for the radiators that shape their zero side pod concept, the extensive area of exposed floor, and the use of the exposed upper side impact bar to direct airflows downwards onto the top of the side pods, have been carried over to the W14. But the lower side pod contours have been smoothed out, flattened towards the front, and elongated towards the back. The side pods are no longer continuous with the engine cover, but are instead separated by a high cooling cannon that transports expelled air from the radiators and exit out the back, either side of the exhaust. As a result, the large cooling louvers on the side pod top are no longer required. "We've analysed it back and forth, and as you can see, the side pods are still very different to any other car. We believe this is not a performance relative part. Obviously, there is no such thing as a holy cow," Toto Wolff explained. "We're looking at everything. These are the first iterations of the side pods, and after a few races they'll probably change a little. But as Mike says, if you change a concept you can end up going 3 steps backwards to take 2 forwards. I love the fact that we stayed bold and continue to follow what the science says for us." So there's been no shift to the more traditional Red Bull bodywork geometry that most teams are now adopting, or to Ferraris. Mercedes has instead chosen an aerodynamic evolution of their initial response to ground effect regulations, which will almost certainly include an evolved underfloor design as well. However, there are significant mechanical changes that the team hopes will get them out of the bind they were in with last year's car. Now, the most significant of these, a completely new rear suspension, wasn't really on display at the launch before the car was taken to Silverstone for testing. However, the goal was to give the car a wider range of suspension travel so that it didn't require the super stiff settings to stabilize, which was a major source of the bouncing last year. If Mercedes is correct in their assessment that the barriers to resolving last year's aerodynamic issues were mechanical in nature, we should finally see the true potential of this very unique aerodynamic concept. Following Red Bull's championship double last season, a few of this year's cars have taken inspiration from the record-breaking RB18. While there were hints of it in Aston Martin's B-Spec car and Williams' last year, more teams, including McLaren, have adopted the Red Bull side pods this year. The team unveiled the MCL 60 earlier, with a 2023 car featuring Red Bull S side pods, including the elongated undercut. Mercedes and Ferrari have been the exceptions, as both teams have followed development on their initial 2022 choices, diverging on an overall design from last year's winners. Lewis Hamilton stated that this is to be expected because Red Bull has found the best overall package. He emphasized, however, that the Mercedes design team will not simply copy the most successful car, and that he believes in their choice to be distinctive. Of course, you can see that some of the cars are approaching what a Red Bull might look like, said Hamilton. Perhaps with the exception of Ferrari, but I don't think we've ever been a team that copied other people. We've always had our own mind and have always been a team that's incredibly creative and innovative and likes to do it our way, and I think that's worked in the past. Although this year's W14 is more of an evolution than a revolution, Hamilton is confident that the Brackley team has resolved last year's issues, as is Toto Wolff. The team principal also rightly pointed out that Red Bull's reduced wind tunnel time due to their cost cap penalty may benefit the Silver Arrows. Red Bull was ordered to pay a $7 million fine and forfeit 10% of their aerodynamic development allowance after being found to have violated the 2021 financial regulations. In addition, because the winning constructor is given a lower percentage of aerodynamic testing time, the Milton Keynes base squad was already allotted less wind tunnel time than the other teams. With Mercedes having been the dominant team in the sport for many years, Wolff understands how this can have an impact. However, given Red Bull's additional cost cap penalty, the Austrian anticipates that this may have an additional impact. I think Red Bull have done a very good job last year, and having a car out there that is half a second or more quicker than everybody else, Wolff told the media. I think that the lack of wind tunnel time is certainly not great for them, and it could be an advantage for us this season. Now, although Mercedes did conduct a shakedown of the car at Silverstone, with the W14 completing a full filming day at the historic circuit, the team won't know how it compares to its rivals until they arrive in Bahrain for pre-season testing. Even then, they won't have a complete picture until the season opening Grand Prix a week later. Hamilton is hoping that this car will allow him to return to the top step of the podium after missing out on a win last season, his first since joining the grid in 2007. But as everyone knows, there is no crystal ball that can predict how Mercedes will perform this season. So will they learn from their mistakes and return to the front, or will 2023 be another disaster year for the Silver Arrows? Share your thoughts in the comment section down below.